You're listening to the CDKL5 in Color podcast. It's June, and that means it's CDKL5 Awareness Month. We are doing things a little differently on the podcast this month. We're diving into some emotional topics and sharing insights direct from our peer caregivers. Our children who live with CDKL5 deficiency disorder are so loved, but life with CDKL5 is hard. So join us as we talk about it. Let's jump right in. Hi, Amanda.
Melissa.
How you doing?
It's super hot today, so summer is here.
Yes, summer is here.
Yeah.
It is officially. I can't believe July is right around the corner.
Yeah. I mean, time does fly, which is good for me in the summer.
Yeah. I know summer's hard. Our caregiving is much more involved in the summer. We talked about that on a previous episode. This is the final episode in our June series of Awareness Month episodes. Anything stand out to you from the episodes that we've recorded so far this month?
Well, I found it very interesting. Maybe not totally surprising, but the themes, we really did have some very consistent themes for each episode. Like 3 to 4 themes where everybody had their own personal flair. But at the end of the day, the caretaking experience that they're living is pretty similar, regardless of the age of their child, the sex, the severity, that kind of stuff. So it's always, I hope, refreshing, or maybe it feels comfort, brings comfort to people to understand that they're not alone and that this is hard business. What we do every day is not easy, and other people struggle and celebrate some of the same things you are.
It's such a human experience. We're all different, but fundamentally, we're more similar than we are different in our reactions and responses to different challenges. And it's not surprising, like you said, but it's also so important to talk about, not only for the sense of camaraderie, but for people who are trying to help us, drug developers, doctors, therapists, for them to understand our experience.
Yes.
We focus so much on treatments and helping our children that we don't think, and other people don't think as much about helping the caregivers. And that's a huge piece of the puzzle, because you have to have healthy caregivers to have healthy children.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're all in it together. I think that's part of what we learned this month. And our final episode in this June Awareness Month series is about your biggest lessons learned. I know we have some. You cannot not learn lessons having a child with CDKL5 deficiency disorder. So we're going to hear from our peers and read what they shared. But before we do that, let's talk about our biggest lessons learned. You want to go first?
Yeah. So, I think in terms of the biggest lesson I've learned about just life and myself is I'm not in control of anything, right? I had plans. They didn't go the way they went. And it took some time to reconcile how I was going to live like that, and raise Ava and go on with life. Probably the best lesson for me in every aspect of life where I can apply it is I can only be, in control of my actions and reactions. So that's one big thing for me. And I think another thing, I thought people would have answers for me that they didn't have, and it took me a long time to figure out how to be a good advocate and patient voice for Ava when we come across physicians and not only that, therapists, anyone, like it didn't occur to me that they didn't know what to do either. That my starting point should not have been like, hey, they're going to do this. It should have been like, hey, here's what I think we should try to do and go from there. So it's, trying to be a better advocate for whatever the world throws at us. So yeah, how about you?
When I was thinking about this question, biggest lessons learned, right away you think of all the medical stuff that you've learned, all of the terminology that you've learned. But really, the biggest lessons, I think, have been, I have two of them. The first is kind of similar to what you're saying. My experience with doctors my whole life was, you have a problem, you go to the doctor, they have a solution for you, you do what they say, you go home, and you're all right. Right. And this experience with my son is so not like that. It's so not like that. We go to the doctor and there's a problem and there's not a solution, or there's options to consider, or there's things to try that may or may not be helpful, that may or may not actually be harmful. The amount that I've had to become a participant in a doctor's visit is something that I never knew I would have to do, and it's something that I've really learned how to do. So now when I go to a doctor's appointment, I know, 1, that I can ask questions, 2, that I should ask questions, and I should have an idea ahead of time about what are some things we can talk about. Because the worst thing is to make all that effort to get all the way to a doctor's appointment and not have been prepared ahead of time, at least to have questions on a list or topics on a list of what I want to accomplish at that appointment. I always have things I want to accomplish at that appointment now. And a lot of times, especially with neurology, it's a short-term plan and a long-term plan, right? I mean, it's my experience growing up is you go to the doctor, you never see him again unless there's another problem. Unless it's your pediatrician that you're going to see every year, you never see him again. You break your arm, you have to go to the orthopedist. Bye. I don't plan to see you again. But all of my son's doctors, we see 7 different specialty doctors. I don't know, but you see them multiple times a year. Some of them I am lucky enough to see annually now, but a lot of them I see multiple times a year. And I'm just like, that is a big lesson learned, is how to be an active part of a medical system because you live with a chronic illness.
Yep. And not just the medical system either, right? There's a lot of other things you have to weave into there within the social network of supports that are.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's not even
Just
counting the school. That's not even counting the
Yeah.
state. Yeah, and then the other lesson learned I have is that just the reality of I didn't know people lived like this. I didn't know that people lived like we live. I really didn't. I didn't know that kids who needed tremendous amounts of support were just sent home without any of that support, but that their parents were expected to turn into caregivers in caring that's not anything like normal parenting.
Yeah, it's skilled.
I had no idea
Yeah.
that when you were desperate for help because you found yourself in a situation where you felt like you were drowning, that it wasn't going to be easy to get help. It might even be just impossible to get it. And I didn't realize that when you try and advocate to get help, like nursing at home, how many steps there are to take to get the actual person to be there for you. I mean, I've been trying to get this nursing for Gregory since we came off the Katie Beckett waiver waitlist, which was 2 years ago, and finally made some progress in May. And now we're coming up on July, and that person who was going to be in my house 2 days a week has still not started. It just takes forever. Everything just takes forever.
I think that's really what's most disappointing. And when I think about what some of these business models in healthcare that support us could be doing, and that is providing the service, quite frankly, you're just sitting around, exchanging money and doing paperwork doesn't help me. Like I could do the paperwork myself if I had to. I hate to say that, but I'm just like, my whole jam here is doing paperwork. So I don't know. It's disappointing. And on the same note, our children deserve to be in the community with us. They really do. It's not easy, even with the supports we have. And some folks still don't have supports, right? They're waiting on wait lists for Medicaid waivers and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so we asked our peer caregiver community about their biggest lessons learned. And when we went through all the responses, there were themes, right? There were lessons learned about building resilience and celebrating life, lessons learned about shifting perspective and understanding, and lessons learned about speaking up and speaking out. I think let's just go ahead and read what people wrote.
All right. The lessons have been about building resilience and celebrating life. Here's a few thoughts. Keep going. Make every moment in life count. Celebrate every milestone. Each milestone looks different, but celebrate it and scream it from the rooftop. Each day is a new day. Our kids are the biggest blessings. To be strong regardless of what or how I'm feeling. To pick myself up faster. To celebrate all the little things. Celebrate every little milestone accomplishment. Live the best life possible with as many memories and experiences while you can.
That's so true, right? I mean, the celebrating. And it's not so much about even celebrating milestones or inch stones, as we sometimes call them, the little things our kids achieve, but just about celebrating being a family and making sure you make things count and taking the risk to take that day trip or take that vacation, or
it'll pull you out of a bad place just to do something different, to get out and go to the park. Like just getting out of the house could be a celebration, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Even if we're out for 30 minutes, she's got out. Everybody does better when we shake up our routine a little bit and try new things.
Yes, that's so true. Shake it up, even if it's only for a short burst.
Yep.
Getting outside is one of the best things you can do.
Yeah.
Even
Sunshine.
if it's hard. Fresh air is good for everybody. The next theme was lessons that have shifted perspective and understanding. So people said, life is short. You never know what each minute holds. To care less about trivial things in life, to not get hung up on what friends' kids are doing that my kid can't do at present. That seizure control isn't everything. We used to think if we cracked the case on seizures, our daughter would magically do better. But we've learned that CDKL5 is so much more complex than that.
That is something that is very hard to hear for people that are newer in this diagnosis, but it's true. Sometimes some of our worst moments with behaviors and things are periods where we were going without seizures, where she really just had a very tough time and she would have a seizure and kind of reset. And we could get back to kind of what we expected. So, wow,
It's
it's a
true. I
big
think
lesson.
it is a big lesson, and it is a shift in your understanding because the first symptom you have of your kid probably is seizures. And so naturally you think, wow, if I can get these seizures, you're so focused on seizures. If I can get them under control, we're going to be A-okay. And that was my thought until really you started to understand more about what CDKL5 is. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder with an
Yeah.
epilepsy component, with
Yeah.
a very severe epilepsy component.
Yeah.
But it's a global disorder that affects a lot of different parts of your kid's system. And that is a shift in your understanding away from it's just the seizures to, wow, we have a lot of challenges here.
Yeah. And we'll hear from some guests that can talk about some kids that have had long periods of seizure freedom that still really need a lot of support and cognitive help to tackle every day.
Yeah.
So our next topic was learning to speak up and speak out. So to trust your gut and not back down. You have to advocate for your kiddo. Just because someone is supposed to give them a service doesn't mean that they will. Don't wait for the doctors. We spent the first 7 months of my child's life waiting for the doctors to tell us what to do, to recommend a medication change, and waiting for appointments and EEGs. I didn't realize that I could push for medication changes when they weren't working and push for EEGs when we needed one. I didn't realize I could push for earlier appointments. You have to be your kid's best advocate, and I am the only one who knows my kid. I am an expert on it. That sometimes the only person you can depend on to look out for your child is yourself. And that accepting your child also means acknowledging and accommodating their disability, not just ignoring.
And I think you build your advocacy muscle pretty quickly when you have a child with CDKL5, right?
I agree.
You
It's out of
can't.
survival.
Yes, it is out of survival.
Oh,
That comment about the first months of their child's life waiting for the doctors, that was totally my experience. I mean, I remember when Gregory was a baby, I would call them every week and tell them how many seizures he had that week, looking for them to do something. And sometimes the doctor would be like, well, let's increase this medicine he's already on. I'm like, Jesus, we've increased it 3 times and it's still not done anything. Like, what are we doing here? But you don't realize, like, it goes back to that, you know, your experience with doctors is that they do their job and that's it. It is a lesson that we all learned to speak up and speak out. One person had mentioned in their biggest lessons learned was they said, leave Google alone. And I really like that. And I want us to talk about it. Google is such a great tool to gather information, see what types of things I can learn out there for the specific purpose of going back to talk to my doctor about them. Not that I'm taking that information and making decisions, because that's not what Google's for. That's not what ChatGPT is for either. The future is exciting, scary, interesting about AI. There'll probably be some really good things that come from it. But when you're typing into ChatGPT, asking a question about a rare disease, they're getting their information from what's already out there. And there's not a lot out there.
Well, and the way citations work and how science publications work, and you get something together. And when you think about CDKL5, it's relatively new, right? They discovered the gene was causing this disorder around 2004. It's all iterative. The science, grows. One publication leads to the next, and our body of evidence grows. But you can't discount that one of the most cited bodies of evidence is going to be one of the first ones for a while. And that's the worst one because we learn a lot, you know? I see that in some of the references and citations when I'm playing around with Chat GPT, coming back to a particular paper that has just an obscene amount of citations, but it's trash because it's so old. It's not that they were bad scientists, but it's what we've learned since that time has drastically changed when describing the disease. So, you know, if it was easy, we'd have solutions. There's a very lovely CDKL5 doctor who told me that once, and I was like, well, it makes perfect sense. You know, if it was easy, I would have fixed it by now. So use your Google, use it to get your questions together for your doctors, but don't pit your doctors against your Google degree. You know, we all have our passions about what we want for our children, but our understanding and capacity is very limited in some ways.
Yeah. And having respect for people who have certain education, right? I mean, you know, all of us should presume that we are experts on our children in that we're with them all the time. We know their cues better than anybody else. We can tell if something's helping or hurting. We have a ton of information to share with our doctors and our teachers and our therapists about our own experience of what we're seeing. And that is incredibly valuable information. But the person sitting across from you who has a degree in whatever it is that you're interacting for them with also has a lot of knowledge. And so taking a look at what everybody brings to the table, that's what's going to be the best for our kids. So use the tools that you have. And one of your best tools is going to be your relationship with your doctor. Well, I think that's it. This is our last awareness episode. I
I
can't believe
know.
it.
It's been a good month. I always love to see the advocacy efforts during June because I see new faces or faces that have grown in the last year. It can get easy to lose track of people on social media. And it's just always great to kind of see a revival of our community during June, sharing about CDKL5.
Yeah, I know. It's so
Thanks.
nice to have an awareness month that we
Yeah.
can be together and be out there talking about CDKL5. I mean, we talk about it all the time, but June's a really special time. So we're looking ahead to the summer. If you are a CDKL5 caregiver, you know that summer is a wild time and it is crazy for us with our change in school
Routine.
schedule and change in routine. So we are going to take a break from releasing new episodes in July and August, and we will be back in September with fresh episodes, some new guests, which I'm excited about, and some cool
Well,
stuff, I think, this
some cool
fall.
stuff. And we'll be engaging you online with some fun stuff in the upcoming month or two as well.
Yeah, yeah, great. And we're always here, so reach out to us through social media or email, and we'll see you in September. Bye, Amanda.
Have a great summer.
Thanks for listening. We hope you'll follow us on social media at CDKL5 in color on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and visit us online at www.cdkl5incolor.com. Have questions or a topic you'd like us to chat about? Would you like to be a guest on our podcast? Email us cdkl5incolor@gmail.com, and we'll be in touch. Until next time.